Hello, I'm Chris Hartwell, and welcome to The Heartbeat, the place where I talk about just a few of the things that make this little guy tick. Today, I'm going to be talking about Zack Snyder's Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Join me, won't you? So, after audiences' less than favorable response to the excessively destructive finale for Man of Steel, much of which was actually caused by Superman himself, Zack Snyder and company decided to kind of craft a sequel that essentially apologized for that creative choice, with Batman kind of acting as the representative for humanity, here to stop this alien from causing further destruction, while at the same time our good friend Callan becomes less and less enamored by this bat vigilante and his rather brutal crime-fighting techniques. And as the title promises, those differences ultimately culminate in the fight that superhero fans have been waiting for years. And if you guys have been online for the last few days at all, I'm sure you're well aware of how divisive this film is in kind of the superhero fan community. And for this superhero fan, this film did have a lot to prove, and going in, to be completely honest, I was kind of dreading the experience, and that really came down to an attitude and a tone which is so present in so many big blockbusters these days, and was certainly present in Man of Steel, as well as in Zack Snyder's Watchmen and 300. An attitude which I simply call macho angst. And I really was determined, though, to set that aside. I really wanted to go to an opening night showing, surround myself with as much genuine fanboy love, and just let this film be what it was going to be. And walking out, I can honestly say it was not a torturous, horrible experience. I don't hate myself for having spent 2.5 hours of my life watching this film, and a large part of that was due to the cast. I mean, first off, Henry Cavill. This guy has been dealt a pretty cruddy hand when it comes to the material he's been given for his 2 outings and the blue tights, but when he's allowed to show it, emanates such a natural goodness and light, as well as the conflict that a really moral character like that would experience when they encounter a world that is so contrary to them. Also, I thought Ben Affleck not only did a great job stepping out of Christian Bale's shadow, but was also one of the key contributors to making this film's very grim, brooding tone actually work. For me, there was just no doubt that he was fully committed to this part, really bringing just the right level of charm and intelligence to Bruce Wayne, and the right level of brutality and ruthlessness to Batman. But for me, the greatest relief that I experienced while watching this film, especially compared to Man of Steel, was director Zack Snyder was just so clearly no longer trying to be someone he wasn't. That person being Chris Nolan, who actually conceived of the story for Man of Steel, because unlike Nolan's The Prestige, Inception, or Memento, where that writer-director had masterfully utilized nonlinear storytelling to withhold and reveal information in a uniquely engaging way, the jumping from one moment in Superman's life to the other on Man of Steel did really nothing for that film but detract from its emotional flow and focus, never really allowing me to find my bearings. So when I walked away from the film, I still really had no idea who this Superman character was, nor really any reason to believe in the relationships in his life, specifically the ones between he and Lois Lane, and between he and his mother, Martha Kent, which do become rather important on this film. And visually, what Mr. Nolan was always trying to do throughout his Dark Knight trilogy was kind of counterbalance their comic book roots with real-life locations, less flashy gadgets and vehicles, and documentary-type camera work, which is so very different to Snyder's style, except the style he used on Man of Steel, because he was trying to imitate Nolan and kind of ended up making a sloppy-looking film. So more than anything, I was relieved on Batman v Superman just to see Zack Snyder doing Zack Snyder, essentially crafting one long music video with his customary unrestrained usage of slow motion and crazy framing, most of which has little to do with story and more to do with looking as slick and as cool as possible. I'm telling you guys right now, this has instantly become hundreds of freshman film students' favorite film of all time, just like that. Though, at the same time, I suppose I myself prefer this over something like Peyton Reed's direction on Ant-Man, which was almost completely devoid of any personality or voice. With that said, though, as cool-looking as this film is, much of, if not all of its emotional vapidness really does come from Snyder's direction, which is either unaware or unconcerned with how and when to show visual restraint as to engage the audience beyond, ooh, this is really cool looking, which wouldn't be so annoying to me if the film wasn't constantly asking me to emotionally invest and emotionally engage. And there was one moment in particular towards the end of the film where an important shift happens, and conceptually, I rather liked it. It was something I hadn't thought of, and it had the potential to really pack a punch. But because Snyder had chosen to present the really crucial moments in those characters' lives leading up to that point in ways that were, again, far more interested in being cool than being played appropriately and therefore effective, the moment just fell flat. But honestly, I can't blame all of this film's problems on Snyder, because as the 5 rather enthusiastic comic book fans in my theater reminded me, as they, and only they, cheered at the arrival and actions of certain characters like Wonder Woman, was this film, at a script level, did very little to actually communicate who these characters were, what they wanted, or why I should care about them. Especially when it came to Superman, nearly everything we understood about him or felt towards him was predicated upon our pre-existing knowledge of the character, which again, wouldn't have killed me so much were it not for these moments where Superman shares a tearful scene with Lois Lane and the Hans Zimmer music swells in the background. Moments that I wanted to feel it. I wanted to cry with Superman, and I wanted to be there with him, but I just couldn't. Though I really can't blame screenwriter Chris Terrio for all of this. He really was given a next to impossible task to justify what amounts to a fanboy's dream, that being seeing Batman and Superman come to fisticuffs. And then being asked to reconcile that with Warner Brothers and DC's kind of determination to handle their comic book properties from as realistic and as grounded of a place as possible. And credit where credit is due, when it came to Batman's storyline, I did find that Terrio, for a large part of this film, found that balance. And though I felt a really solid connection with Wayne during that opening sequence where he's kind of running through the finale of Man of Steel, much of the film's second act was meandering and unfocused, having bitten off far more than it could chew, leaving me desiring a lot more from each of those plot threads. And it's honestly not fair to hold this against the writers because it was so clearly a studio mandate that this film set up the Justice League, but it was laughable the way that they so lazily shoehorned in those characters' introduction. And though perhaps not laughable, Eisenberg's performance as Lex Luthor just did not belong in this film, and for me it really had nothing to do with how similar or dissimilar he was from the Lex Luthor of the comic books. It was just his performance. Though I could tell he was going for something bold like Heath Ledger's Joker, it just ended up feeling like it belonged in a Joel Schumacher Batman film instead. But now, let's take a moment and assess what many fanboys were probably most excited about on this film, that being, how was the action on Batman v Superman, and more specifically, how was the big slam-bang throwdown between Supes and the Bat? Well, there were a couple pretty stellar action sequences involving Batman, with one in particular where he's forced to punch his way through a warehouse full of thugs that I found particularly well choreographed and shot. But for a film titled Batman v Superman, I really did find the final showdown between these two titans rather forgettable. I mean, yes, there were moments, mind you, where they did kind of highlight the fun differences between Batman and Superman in the former's resourcefulness and intelligence. And when they focused on those things, in those moments, the fight became more than just two big guys punching each other through walls. But when the film stopped asking, how is this human going to last more than a few seconds against this virtually invincible Kryptonian, that was all it became. So, at the end of the day, I can't say that I hated Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I really think that Chris Terrio did his best and took this story seriously, presenting a handful of interesting themes and ideas, and Zack Snyder did give us a couple great action sequences, but all of those elements and more were either restrained or stained by misguided direction or studio mandates, kind of leaving me all the more disinterested in the future of the DC cinematic universe. They just haven't gotten me to care for these characters, and I find watching their CG stunt doubles punching one another, falling down, getting back up, punching one another again, falling down, getting back up, and punching one another again, just to be kind of boring. So with all that said, I will give Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice a 2.5 out of 5. I would still love to know what you guys think, though. Comment below and let me know, especially to you guys who really went into this film thinking it was going to be great. Did you walk out still thinking it was great, or did you walk out just a little bit disappointed? Comment below and let me know. Also, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you all to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.